Okay, we're getting started. I'm just waiting on Dee to get here. We're gonna kind of give a basic rundown of what is going on today. We're gonna start this video. It's about 42 minutes long. Of course, it's gonna be longer because I'm gonna be breaking things up, um, trying to cover my opinions, add in some little factors, stuff like that. But we're just hanging out for D. Then I'll get it started. But I wanted to cover, just kind of talk a little bit about what's, again, Putin's perspective on the war. And if we have time today, there are Ukrainian refugees in America that someone got their perspective on. And I will, of course, provide all the links in the description, as always, when we're done. I'm not sure how much longer D is going to be. I just want to get a little bit of an early start today. It's been a long day, even though, well, not technically long day, but we're gonna just call it a long day. Um, and go ahead and go from there. But it is what it is. So, um, yeah, we're gonna see how today goes. Um, sorry, my brain is all over the place today. I'm a little bit scattered, I think is the best word for it. But I know some things I'm not going to go into depth about, but I just want to kind of bring to everyone's attention is I was reading an article, not an article, a thing on Twitter X about evidently there have been 4 or 5 situations where guns were brought into the Capitol building, including 2 of the times Trump was there. Um, that isn't making the news. There was not a lot of news coverage about the crazy dude with a gun near the White House where Secret Service had to shoot the guy. So, there's a lot going on that's not making the news that we need to be aware of. And kind of just keep your eyes open for stuff like that. There's been just a ton of things going on, not to mention the stuff I can't really talk about because, YouTube and all, they don't like it. There's just a lot of stuff going on.
The absolute vile, the Mummy with Tom Cruise.
Oh, it's not the worst one.
Huh?
That's not the worst Mummy. And by the way, I'm live on my podcast, so if you don't want it to be out there, your opinions,
Hitler did nothing.
Stop that. Oh my God, don't make me. Don't
Kanye
make
West
me.
is Jesus.
Don't make me. Don't make me.
He's not Jesus, he's Jesus.
Oh my Lord. I need to get a second mic and put my son on it.
No.
Actually, I have a second mic and I could plug it in and you could have a conversation.
But then it wouldn't be funny.
Yeah, it would. It'd still be funny. You're a great kid.
What's he saying?
I don't know. What was he saying? Oh.
Is that the real one?
No, that's a parody one that I follow. That's actually a good account. He's not trying to scam people. But yeah, I got to get my son on a microphone. Eventually we'll get there.
Bob, what's your opinion on Blue Sky?
True
Twitter.
I've not been on Blue Sky and I have no intentions of joining Blue Sky.
Why not?
Because it's an echo chamber.
Is it though?
Yes, it is. I don't do echo chambers. Echo chambers are forbidden. Forbidden echo chamber stuff. I don't play that game. Well, I am not sure where Dee is. She should have been here. Oh, she had to make a phone call. That's right. Could be a few more minutes. But I figured why leave you guys hanging? I can sit here and just, talk crap, whatever, for a few. Oh, crap. No. One of my posts that I put out there has 17 likes, but yeah, it's from a company that appears to be stifling said stuff. It's funny. They weren't thrilled with my opinion of them, but 17 people supported it. Okay. I'm reading a Libs of TikTok post. People are on Reddit asking for legal advice for their daughter who was caught on camera vandalizing a Tesla and Cybertruck during a protest and is now being prosecuted. Wow. You want legal advice? Raise your kids to not be activists. Save yourself the headache.
Don't let protests happen and let the government walk over you.
Well, no, a bunch of Tesla dealerships have been vandalized in the last few weeks. Actually, the last few days throughout the United States. It's not pretty. It is not pretty at all. And so, yeah, that's been going on. I don't think I had. Did I have anything of any decent value?
This is actually Biden's America, the one he set up for.
Yeah. Oh, update on something from a couple of days ago. Kamala Harris is talking about running for governor of California. Let's see how that goes. Oh my God, there's an actual article. Is coffee racist? How drinking coffee perpetuates white supremacy. Oh, the level of delusion. The level of delusion that these people have to sit there and make these comments, post an article about it. Like the mental gymnastics you have to do to prove that coffee is racist. Coffee, yeah, y'all. Y'all are stupid. That's all I gotta say. If you think coffee's racist, you have a serious mental illness. Oh, here's an interwoven history of baskets and racial dynamics in America.
You know no one can see your page, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm just reading it out. There's no point sharing it. But yeah, evidently some jackasses think that basket weaving and baskets are racist. How the hell? Like, oh my god. Someone was put when I first discovered Chat GPT, I immediately found it extremely well suited for fluff pieces. So AI is being used. How chewing gum is racist. That's the article he found from Chat GPT. Chewing gum is racist. Okay. Um, yeah, I can think of everything. I can do the mental gymnastics to make anything racist. Breathing is racist. Yeah, let's go down that path. Are people really this stupid? I gotta know.
But
Are
it's
they
America.
really? Oh my god. How is it that people with nothing better to do than think up ways for things to be racist instead of thinking up ways to, cure cancer, solve world hunger? Actually, Elon Musk already offered the world hunger solution, and the jackasses never took him up on it. Anyone want to guess why? Um, yeah, this is just, it is all levels of insane. It really truly is. And yeah, world's all levels of messed up. So, um given the time crunch, I'm going to go ahead and start this video. And oh, there's D. I was just going to say, well, wait, I'll pause it when D jumps in.
Go ahead.
All right.
Pause.
Start the video. Oh, I don't know where D went. I think
I'm
she
here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
All right, I got to. There's the entire screen and audio. Oh, for fuck's sake. Really? We're going to do this to me every single time? All right. Anyways, let's try to get through this.
I can't guarantee that. I'm highly medicated, so
Oh, that'll make it all the more entertaining.
it will. Now, Crazy Bee has been instructed to mute my mic. If she does not, and anything translates over, I'm not responsible, but I will drive down and get her. Just remember that. So
Uh
you
huh.
could be reading about a dead body, so you never know.
Nah, I would
Nah,
not do that to you. I
just
will mute you.
yeah, she's
What
gonna
I'll
scream
do,
in my ear.
no, no, no. What I'll do is I'll take the video and I'll edit it so you're talking in your sleep. I'll do the AI voiceover type thing.
Oh my
And
god.
there we go.
There we go. Now you'll really mess with me. Okay. All
Yep.
right. So while the
Let's hit.
video's on, then I'm gonna crunch my bag of potato chips. How's that?
All righty. Sounds good.
All right. No
Between
popcorn
Russia
today.
and Ukraine. Now that the war has gone past 3 months, the actions on the ground and in the propaganda racket are starting to tell a better story of exactly why all of this is happening. With that in mind, in this video, we are going to explore the causes of the war. This process will run the course of 4 phases. First, we will discuss the substantive issues that they are fighting over. Second, I will explain why those easy answers are, at best, half explanations for the war. Third, we will go over explanations for why bargaining failed between Russia and Ukraine. And finally, we will talk about what each of the mechanisms for war imply about how the war might end. Longtime viewers of the channel will be familiar with some of the discussion ahead, but it will still be helpful to put it all together in one coherent framework. And if you've heard enough about any one of these causes, you can always turn on chapters and jump to the next one. With that, let's get to it. We're going to start off with the substantive causes of the war, and the first of these are the separatist regions. Tensions in Ukraine are nothing new. Way back in the 2004 presidential election, pro-West candidate Viktor Yushchenko squared off against pro-East candidate Viktor Yanukovych. In the runoff election, Yushchenko received 46.69% of the vote, while Yanukovych received 49.42%. However, international
So that was a really close election.
Close. Yeah,
That
that was
is
close.
ridiculously close.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we thought American elections were bad.
Right.
This one, yeah, that's
Recount.
very close. Recount.
Recount.
Yes. All right, let's hit play.
National election observers deemed the results fraudulent, and both candidates declared themselves victor. After rerunning the runoff, Yushchenko won with 52% of the vote to Yanukovych's 44.19%. The major problem here was that the vote was heavily divided by region. Yanukovych was popular in eastern Ukraine, where Russian is the dominant language, and Yushchenko was popular in the west and center, where Ukrainian is the dominant language. Nevertheless, 6 years later, Yanukovych would emerge victorious in the next presidential election. But in 2013, the Euromaidan crisis began. Ukraine looked set to agree to a trade deal with the European Union. Suddenly, though, Yanukovych deviated to supporting the Eurasian Economic Union, Russia's trade bloc. This led to protests in Kyiv's Maidan Square, hence the name, and a popular uprising. In short order, Yanukovych fled to Russia. Russia annexed Crimea, and two separatist regions, the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic, declared themselves independent. Since then, Ukraine has been fighting a war against them. Political science.
I want to point out this separatist regions is kind of like how in the Civil War, some of the southern states wanted to secede from the Union and become their own. So they're basically going through kind of like what happened in the 1860s in America.
Scientists do not classify these as interstate wars because regular Russian soldiers were not taking part in it. However, many private Russians were taking part, and there is little doubt that the breakaway governments were receiving support from the highest levels. In that regard, the 2022 invasion is just a continuation of the previous form of the war. Overt actions allow Russia to put greater pressure on Ukraine and perhaps finally make progress in capturing the entirety of the regions. Second, and getting progressively larger with Russia's aims, is a Crimean land bridge. Crimea is a peninsula that juts out of Ukraine, not Russia. Zooming in on this, for all Russian intents and purposes, Crimea is essentially an island territory. Between 2014 and 2018, traffic coming in and out of Russia had to go via ferry. This was impractical over the long term. As such, Russia started building the Crimean Bridge in 2016. 2 years later, it opened for cars and trucks. A parallel rail bridge opened 1 year after that. But that is still only a single access point for a population of 2.4 million people.
Damn, they need to come construct bridges in the United States.
I'm sorry, say it again?
I said, damn, they need to construct bridges in the United States.
I know.
They got that bridge up for traffic in 2 years, and then for rail in another year.
Yeah.
You know how long it takes to get a bridge built where I am? Wow.
Forever and a day.
Wow, that's amazing. And look at how nice it looked.
Yeah, it was, and again, the difference between over there and here.
And here,
also,
I mean,
there's probably, because it was so desperately needed to maintain control over Crimea,
right?
You're going to see that. They're going to build it quickly. They're going to build it timely. They got to do this in order to sustain their control.
Right. That's just proof, again, though, that it can be done.
Oh, yeah. A lot of things can be done.
Uh-huh.
It's just bureaucracy and bullshit get in the way.
Yep. Go ahead.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Strip of territory running along the Dnipro River up to the Donbass is an obvious place to start. And Russia succeeded in that effort when Mariupol fell on May 20th, 2022. Next up, Russian irredentism. Irredentism is just a fancy term for wanting previously held land back. With that in mind, this explanation is basically taking the previous explanation for war and turning it up to 1000. Instead of being interested in just capturing a land bridge through eastern Ukraine to Crimea, imagine instead that Putin had dreams of re-establishing European borders similar to those during the Soviet era. There is good evidence for this. Since 1997, Russia and Belarus have formed a supranational union state, with the eventual goal of essentially merging the two countries. Abkhazia and South Ossetia, the breakaway regions that have been de facto states since the 2008 Russo-Georgian War, participate as observers. So too does Transnistria, which has been de facto independent since a 1990 civil war with Moldova. It will not surprise you to find out that Russian troops intervened in that one too. More recently,
course.
in 2021, Putin published an essay titled On the Historical Unity of Russians and Ukrainians, which basically argued that Russians, Belarusians, and Ukrainians are all a common people. Putting these pieces together, Putin's grand goal under this theory for the war is to reestablish something like the old Soviet borders, or at least the regions that are willing to come along for the ride. Fourth on this list, pure East-West rivalry. The war might not be about Ukraine per se, but rather a broader battle between Russia and the West. Since the end of the Cold War, NATO has steadily crept eastward. First, unification pushed NATO through the former East Germany. Then the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland joined in 1999. Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia all followed in 2004.
I want to point out the mouthful of all those countries' names.
Mm-hmm.
All the Slavic names. Oh my God. They are a mouthful. So, but again, those are all countries that used to be controlled by Russia and have broken away and don't want jack shit to do with it. So, what we're seeing now is those countries starting to step up to help Ukraine because they know what's coming if Russia wins.
Then Albania and Croatia in 2009, Montenegro in 2017, and North Macedonia in 2020. If Putin views the Cold War as having never truly ended, each of these departures represents a further deterioration of Russian influence. Fighting a war to capture Ukraine is then just a first step in a longer plan to push further back. Number 5. Energy. As it stands right now, Europe depends on Russia for its energy needs, to the point that Europe is still buying much of that fuel despite the other economic sanctions. This gives Russia an enormous amount of market power. It can take advantage of its geographic proximity to Europe to sell the fuel at substantial profits.
I want to point out that Russia is such a horrific threat that they're buying their fuel to keep warm through the winter from them. But, bad Russia. I mean, if Russia really wanted to take Europe with how dependent they are on gas, they could just drop some toxins in it and
Well,
poof, Europe
not only
gone.
that, just not sell them the fuel. That's all.
Yeah, but Russia's so bad. Russia's so evil.
Because as a matter of fact, you remember that gentleman I brought up last week that we know that is in that small German town said that they weren't able to get fuel, and they basically went to chopping down any tree they could find. They were breaking up furniture, all
Yep.
in an effort to fuel their homes. And there were
Because
even
Russia bad.
there were even widespread reports, if I recall correctly, that that's what was occurring. Do you recall that?
Uh-huh. I
Okay.
do.
Yep.
Yep. And a lot of people froze and starved during that time frame. But Russia bad. Russia bad, right? This is what I mean. They sit there and they talk so much shit about Russia, America, but then when everything goes wrong, they want somebody to,
Bail them out.
cover for them, fix their problems.
Right, exactly.
But they also talk a lot of shit about the people they want to come in and fix it. How's that make any sense?
Does not.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. Let's continue.
The problem is that Ukraine is not yet in a position to fuel Europe. You see, there are enormous untapped oil and gas deposits here, 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 and here. Their proven natural gas reserves rank second in Europe, only behind Norway. Although Russia dwarfs all of these numbers, the ability to extract and sell to willing trade partners would make Ukraine a major competitor, if they can get their wells online. And that's a big if. Obviously, Russia would benefit from capturing and extracting the fuel from those deposits, particularly in the Sea of Azov and west of Crimea, which would be easier to control. However, the war might not be intended to do that specifically. Instead, merely starting the war prevents Ukraine from beginning extraction. And as long as fighting continues, the energy reserves may as well not exist, which thereby preserves Russia's market power. In fact, the very instability of the war has caused Ukraine's international business partners to withdraw from those projects. And it is difficult to imagine any company that would jump at the chance, even if the war were to end tomorrow. Number 6. Water. Another issue is the water crisis in Crimea. Back in 2014, Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula in haste, taking advantage of the chaos over in Kyiv. Everything else was an afterthought. That included water. You see, Crimea's main source of water used to be a canal that runs from the rest of Ukraine. In response to the Russian annexation, Ukraine took the obvious step. They dammed the canal. This has led to water shortages in Crimea.
So Crimea is now being dehydrated, thirsted to death?
Yep. By Ukraine.
Yep. So Russia bad, but Ukraine also.
Good. Uh-huh.
I mean, Russia, eventually turned the gas back on. Ukraine is not turning the water back on. That's harming civilians. That's what's harming civilians. And you know what? It was Europe who technically pulled out of Russia's gas, and he cut it off because they pulled out. They were like, "Nope, we're not going to do this." And now that Europe's back getting their stuff from Russia, Ukraine still ain't turned on the water to Crimea. Want to put? Well, this was also at the beginning of the war.
Yeah.
So they may or may not have changed that. I just want to point this out. I am talking about this as at the video at the time that, he was recording it. So a few years ago. But it is interesting that, Russia bad while Ukraine is doing this nonsense. I don't get it. Anyways, back to seeing why Russia bad.
Especially for the agricultural sector. Estimates are that Crimea loses more than $200 million each year as a result. Over 8 years, that's $1.6 billion. Starting the war meant that Russia could destroy the canal and secure future water access. Number 7. Nazis. This is the worst of the options. If you go back to Putin's address that began the war, the purpose of the invasion was to strive for the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. Now, it is true that there are neo-Nazis in Ukraine. but there are neo-Nazis all over Europe, including more than a dozen groups in just Russia all by itself. The fact is that Nazis do not have any meaningful support or political power within Ukraine. To underscore that point, Zelensky is Jewish and had members of his extended family die in the Holocaust.
I also want to point out historically, and there is facts to this, Jewish people fought with the Nazis in the military. So I wouldn't use that as an actual reasoning. My heritage is why I'm not anti whatever. No, it doesn't work that way. It does not.
Right.
So, just going to point out that, as much as they want to say, oh, that's a reason why he wouldn't support neo Nazis, actually, no, it's not a very good reason, but we're going to leave that at that so I don't get in any hate speech trouble. Just going to point out that historically, there were Jewish people who fought for the Nazis, mostly to save their own skin, but we're just going to leave the technicalities at that.
Furthermore, Russia defeated the Azov Battalion, the group most commonly cited as harboring fascist ideologies, in the Battle of Mariupol. Yet the war continued. But if you understand the broader propaganda effort at home, this wild claim begins to make more sense. Remember Victory Day? That gigantic annual holiday and patriotic parade that Putin is so fond of? It celebrates the Soviet victory over Germany in World War II. And
the World War II where we helped the Soviet army defeat Germany. Just want to point that out. America helped them, and they helped America and Britain, but, Russia bad.
Russian people have legitimate reason to be proud of their accomplishment. After all, the Soviet Union lost about an eighth of its population during the war.
That's
Consequently, if you were Putin, anything that ties the current war to the Great Patriotic War, as it's called in Russia, is good for business. But it's definitely not the reason that the war is happening. All told, we have 7 areas of dispute between Russia and Ukraine, 6 of which are plausible. There is a good chance that you have heard of them before. After all, it is difficult to give a coherent narrative of the war without citing at least some of those explanations. However, perhaps the most important finding in the research on war is that none of them fully explain the conflict. At best, they are collectively half causes of war. Let's take the territorial explanation as an example. To illustrate, we turn to some lines on maps. If Ukraine and Russia fight a war to a complete military conclusion, there are many different possible post-conflict borders. Here, everything to the west stays Ukraine, everything to the east becomes Russia. Or maybe Russia will turn things around and capture a whole lot more land, leaving us with this border. Maybe things will stay roughly like they are, leaving only partial gains for Russia. Maybe Ukraine's counterattacks will be extremely successful, and Ukraine will reestablish something close to the pre-war line of control. And maybe there's a small chance that Ukraine could even recapture Crimea. If we take these and the other possible outcomes, and weigh them by their relative likelihoods, we might get something like this as the average expected outcome. Wherever that line is, think about what would happen if the parties simply implemented it right now. By definition, neither country could hold more territory in expectation by fighting a war instead. And by implementing it, no one else has to die, no more money has to be spent on tanks, and we can go back to some semblance of normalcy in Europe. In fact, there is some wiggle room on these settlements. The space between this yellow line and the white line represents Ukraine's costs of war. All we need to do is convert Ukraine's value of lost life and monetary inefficiencies into square kilometers of land. I know this
so
seems
that's
weird,
how we're going to
but governments make these kinds of strange...
Hold on. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So that's how we're going to determine it by square miles of land. That's the
Um,
value of the death. Okay.
that's been the basic run of the NATO to make
Yeah.
these determinations. That's actually something he did not come up with. NATO did.
Right. I'm just saying in general. We had talked earlier what was the cost or the value of life.
Yeah,
And we had concluded that there was no money that was worth it. But now,
they're
now,
talking
we,
square acres per
yeah,
life.
square acres of land. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep, according
Give
to
me, yeah.
NATO.
Wonder how many bodies it takes for to get a square of land. Go ahead.
Range comparisons all the time. Tons of agencies do this within the United States government alone. And for them, the estimate is $10 million per person.
Mm,
Oh, so there's our monetary value, $10 million.
person.
Yep.
You know damn well that that doesn't happen. That they're not giving our soldiers $10 million apiece if they're killed.
No, they're not. They're what that means basically is what each human is capable of basically benefiting their government with. We could bring in $10 million of value in our lifetime to whatever country we live
Right.
in.
Right.
Yeah, that's how they base it. Is
Yeah.
how much money they could have made off of us.
Hmm.
But it never goes to the family.
And
Funny
that's
how
what
that
I'm saying.
works.
Yeah, the family never sees it.
No,
Interesting.
why would they?
Yeah.
But let's continue.
We can do the same for Russia's costs of war using this red line. Any division of territory between the yellow and red lines is mutually preferable to war. While it is easy to visualize this in terms of a territorial dispute, the same logic applies to the other topics. Take energy reserves as another example. Imagine that this green bar represents the total profits that could be made with the fuel in question. Perhaps a war would see the value divided proportionately like this. But war will also destroy some of those profits due to the death and lost investment opportunities. As such, the actual division will be something like this. If Russia is really threatened by a glut of European energy, why not create a joint company that could drill the wells and share larger profits for everyone?
And this is where he has a good point. If Russia were to team up with some European country or to even just team up with Ukraine to get these combine their company and make money together, it would make more sense than just going to war. This war does not make sense no matter how you look at it. It's just, in my opinion, it makes no sense. But let's continue.
That might sound weird, but it has historical precedent. Let's head over to the border between Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. I'd like you to meet Percy Cox, a British High Commissioner from the 1920s in the area. He liked to draw lines on maps almost as much as I do. In particular, he drew a somewhat arbitrary neutral zone between Kuwait and Saudi Arabia that looked roughly like this. This was not much of an issue until 1938, when oil was discovered in Kuwait, suggesting that the neutral zone may be valuable. The situation had the perfect makings for a conflict, with each potentially claiming rights to the possible deposits. But that's not what happened. Instead, the companies formed a joint venture to extract the oil and split the revenues from it. And even though Kuwait and Saudi Arabia divided the neutral zone itself in 1965, giving us today's borders, oil revenues are still divided according to the earlier agreement. This kind of solution also works with autonomy. Simply calculate what the expected level of autonomy would be given a war and implement that. Indeed, doing this is extremely common worldwide. China has Hong Kong and Macau, two of the most famous ones, as well as 100 others, including Tibet. We also have one here in the United States, Puerto Rico. Autonomy agreements are why civil wars are not as common as they would be otherwise. To sum up, this is why war is puzzling. In theory, a range of settlements exists that leaves both countries better off than had they fought a war. That's a large reason why wars are rare. The average probability that a given country starts a war against another given country in any given year isn't 20% or 10% or 5% or even 1%. It's well below that. Of course, that 0.31% does happen every now and then, as we are seeing with Russia and Ukraine. But if we want to understand why any war happens, including this one, we need to explain why the parties could not reach one of those negotiated settlements instead. In other words, we need to think of this as a two-step process. First, we need something that they are both willing to fight over. And second, we need something that you might call a bargaining friction, something that prevents them from reaching one of those negotiated settlements. To get war, we must have a little from column A and a little from column B. If we have one without the other, we do not get war. What fits into column B? We can begin with the last of the remaining explanations for the war commonly discussed in the public sphere. And that's number 8, preventive war. This is the most understood source of bargaining failure.
This is one of the ones that fascinates me. A preventative war. They go to war to prevent war. How does this make sense?
Well, we're going to find out.
Hopefully. Let's find out. But this one, even though I've watched this and gone through, watched it again while editing, this one still does not make sense to me.
All right.
In the current war. And it is one that we have discussed specifically here before. The short version of this explanation, as Putin tells it, is that Ukraine was improving its ties to NATO. If Ukraine were to join and successfully integrate with NATO, it would benefit from the alliance's military strength. That would make coercing Ukraine more difficult in the future. Thus, Putin had to strike while the opportunity presented itself. To visualize this explanation, imagine that Russia's war payoff, net costs, was right here at about now. If Ukraine joins NATO, the balance of power shifts over here. Now the best Russia can obtain in a future settlement is at the yellow line. But that is worse than fighting under the more favorable military balance right now, represented by the previous red line. Hence the war. This would appear to be the second time in recent memory that this has happened. Back in 2008, Georgia was making similar overtures. Then Russia invaded to convince NATO that further integration was too risky. Putin has also suggested, most recently during his May 9th Victory Day speech, that Kyiv declared it could attain nuclear weapons. If true, this would have a similar effect on the balance of power. However, while we have previously discussed that Ukraine has the technical capacity to build nuclear weapons, they are nowhere close to doing so, nor are they taking steps to change that. That aside, the shift from a potential alliance partnership is good enough by itself to constitute a bargaining problem, so we can add it to the list. Next up, number 9, preemptive war.
Back up there.
This is a more recent
argument. Angie, back up on that part. The
Which
question that I have is the joining of NATO, not what land mass they're going to get, but that if
they just don't want NATO right next door.
Correct, right, because NATO then could come in and they are going to be much stronger than Russia is to stand by themselves.
Yes.
That I see that more of the issue than anything with regard to how much land I'm going to get.
Exactly. I don't think this is about. Again, I watched a video. Putin flat out said, "I have plenty of natural resources here. I don't need yours. I don't need your land. What the hell am I going to do with it? I already have the biggest continent on the globe. And why would I want to go to war unnecessarily?" with
Right.
Europe. Why do I
Right.
need Europe?
Right.
And so again, NATO encroaching, well, those NATO countries don't have the resources. So I could see why he would be afraid of them invading to get it instead of talking
Exactly.
peace and
Exactly.
offering a mutual agreement, setting up a mutual business. This is again where all these arguments tend to collapse. NATO is always a threat to these countries, except NATO ain't got its NATO was just caught with its pants down. It doesn't have the ability to fight Russia. So here we are, Russia claiming NATO's going to attack us. NATO's getting too close, but NATO hasn't been prepping for 40 years.
But I don't.
And
But I don't think it's just so NATO goes in first and gets their ass handed to them. Then what happens?
well, here's and
The NATO,
exactly.
the
And NATO's
NATO,
not stupid enough to step those lines.
exactly, and then they're going to send in who? Other forces, other boots on the ground to go.
Mostly America. Mostly
Exactly,
America.
exactly, and
The
that's
one
what.
country they shit on the
Right,
most other than
right,
other
and
than
so
Russia.
really, if that's the case, if that's what we're going to say, that he doesn't want NATO on the doorstep, right? And really,
Mhm.
NATO is America. He's being pretty damn strategic in that he doesn't want us there because he knows
And
what
can
could
you blame
happen.
him? Can
No,
you
I
blame
can't.
him?
No. Would you want
I
that
mean,
power there?
if you okay, let's just say you have 10 acres of land, 20 acres of land, and your neighbor is trying to steal your land, and they keep encroaching closer and closer, and they get a bunch of friends to team up with surrounding land
Right,
around you. Would you
right.
feel safe with these neighbors
Hell
who don't
no.
like you?
No.
No, I'd have an issue. I'd be calling in the cops and getting restraining orders.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and again,
So,
I'm not going to sit there and justify how he's doing things, like the way he's treating prisoners and stuff.
right,
That's unacceptable till the
right,
end. But I can understand his concerns.
right.
And this is no different than what started World War II. Germany, terrified of communism creeping in and taking over, decided to head it off. And what did they do? They went they went overboard. Unacceptable behaviors happened, all out of paranoid fear. Someone's here. Could you go get the door? Thank you. So again, they keep saying Russia bad, Russia bad. Well, Russia has no reason to encroach on anybody. Obviously, there's a reason he wants that little sliver of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
He's not asking for anything beyond that. He's not making an attempt to really go beyond that. I don't see him wanting all of Ukraine. I just see him wanting this little corner that leads to the
Yeah.
Black Sea so, he can get involved in trade and stuff. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, it makes sense to me. I don't know. Maybe the media has been getting away with these fear tactics for way too long. I see D's muted, so let's go ahead, hit play, and go from there.
If true, this would have a similar effect on the balance of power. However, while we have previously discussed that Ukraine has the technical capacity to build nuclear weapons, they are nowhere close to doing so, nor are they taking steps to change that. That aside, the shift from a potential alliance partnership is good enough by itself to constitute a bargaining problem, so we can add it to the list. Next up, number 9, preemptive war. This is a more recent argument that Putin put forth, also from his May 9th Victory Day speech. We saw the military infrastructure being built up. The threat grew every day. Russia launched a preemptive strike at the aggression. There is some subtlety here. Although preventive and preemptive war sound similar, they are different. A preventive war is fought to forestall a long-term shift in the balance of power, like when the United States invaded Iraq, ostensibly to stop Saddam Hussein from developing nuclear weapons. A preemptive war, like what motivated the start of World War I, is fought to exploit first strike advantages and deny them to your opponent. Visually, if Ukraine initiated the war, perhaps the balance of power would have looked like this. But if Russia initiated the war, maybe the balance of power would have looked like this instead. This might be a large difference in power compared to each side's cost of war. Under such circumstances,
I want to point out that if Ukraine had initiated the war, it would have been over this way, like he said. Well, that's where most of the fighting is, right there. It makes you think, again, Ukraine initiated it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Russia had, they'd be pushing harder to advance further. And they could have come from so many different directions. But no, this region right here is where all the war is going on. Other than the bombings and the artillery stuff, yeah, those things. You know what I'm talking about. The ones you put in the thing and it shoots out and it goes way over there. Missiles. There's the
Missile
word.
launcher. It's called missile launcher.
Oh my God. Game of charades on top of it.
There we
For the
go.
podcast. You always
You
get to
know,
have fun with this
it's
one.
the thing. It's the thing that makes the thing, go to the thing and go boom. It's the thing.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, it's that thing.
All right, let me hit play. But yeah, if it weren't for those, again, this is what makes me think that, Ukraine very likely provoked this. And again, yes, there were Russian, well, not soldiers, people who snuck in and took over regions quietly. That silent invasion thing, kind of like what was happening in America when people crossed the border here illegally and then started hiding all over the place and sending information to other countries. Yeah,
Well,
sorry.
and
The
and and I
similarities are
wonder,
amazing.
how many Americans were in that mix while that was going on. Because remember, we had Hunter and Joe were involved. So
Mhm.
with what was really going on,
Exactly.
which
And
we
this
still don't
again,
know.
a lot of countries have been itching for war. They make a lot of money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Trump's a no war person. Trump don't
Right.
want war. So naturally, they're going to be kind of scrambling to start something so they can make some kind of money in the next
Right.
4
And
years.
even like our war people, that ran for president, like I asked the question earlier, where's our girl Nikki Haley at? I have not heard
Yeah.
from her for love nor money. And
Yep.
she was adamant about this war. And where's she been? I may be missing
Am
her. We
I?
might be, ships in the night crossing paths, but I've seen jack shit on her. Anything. No opinion pieces, nothing.
Uh-huh.
Not in any of the um
Anyone want to give a wild guess?
yep. Cause my girl's working making those missile things go boom, chuck a boom.
Yeah, and what's the point in having missiles that go boom if no one's going to buy them and use them?
Right.
All right, let's hit play.
the minimum division necessary to satisfy Russia is this. Meanwhile, this is the minimum division necessary to satisfy Ukraine. These are not compatible, so the parties are destined to fight a war. This is a lot of lines on maps. But in the end, it is just a complicated way of arriving at the classic game theoretic model known as a prisoner's dilemma. Such preemptive wars are rare historically. The most well-known is the aforementioned World War I and the cult of the offensive. Following the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, European leaders worried that whoever struck first would have a decisive advantage. This was the origin of the infamous Schlieffen Plan, named for German Field Marshal Alfred von Schlieffen. Another example is the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, also known as the Six-Day War.
Yep.
Here, Egypt began moving troops into the Sinai Peninsula. Israel, convinced that an attack was imminent, took the initiative.
But the problem is if you take the initiative, you're the bad guy.
You're the aggressor.
This is
how's
called
that saying go?
paranoia, and they're freaking pushing this shit. Like, oh, they're going to attack. They're going to attack. No, you're just paranoid. Shut up and go home.
But you're moving in on my space.
No, they wouldn't have to move in on anybody's space. Like, again, in the situation with the 6-Day War, Egypt assumed something was going to happen. So they strategically positioned and attacked first.
Right.
Because heaven forbid you should let the bad guy be the bad guy.
And remember, at least in my house, whoever hits first, well,
They're in
you get to
trouble.
finish. Well, no, you get to finish it. So, you got to always remember that. Smack me and I'm going to finish
Well,
it.
a good way to look at this is, okay, I'm walking down the street. I assume this person's going to try to mug me, so I have the right to go and shoot him or beat him up.
Right.
Because they look like they're going to do something.
Right.
On a global level, that is so much more worse than me on the street being paranoid. Okay, like, this is just not an okay thing. This is literally paranoid people in power throwing other humans around as
Like
cannon
they're
fodder
rag dolls. Like they're
because
rag dolls.
they're terrified of losing power or whatever.
Right.
This is all
That
paranoia.
to me it demonstrates lack of leadership, the ability to assess the situation adequately.
Mhm.
That's not to say that you want to be caught with your pants down, but at the same time, you don't need to be rolling up on anybody because you think.
They're
Where
gonna
to
do
get
something.
where did you get you think and get you anywhere? Where's your
Uh-huh.
proof or your actions or whatever? And that whole theory of whoever strikes first seems to win the battle. Well, normally the only time that might happen would be, let's take Pearl Harbor, for example. We were
Yeah.
caught with our pants down on that one.
But then we
But
turned around and whooped some ass.
exactly. So
So
that,
no, I don't
yeah,
think it's okay for them to do this. The
yeah,
strategy is bullshit. It's an
right.
excuse to start a war.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm going with it.
Mm-hmm.
But we shall continue since we're about halfway through.
China took great pains to silently move into North Korea, catching the United States by surprise in the Korean War. This
Yep.
stopped what might have otherwise been a complete military victory for the Southern Coalition. The rarity of such events continues through today, because there is not much evidence that Russia was trying to exploit a first strike advantage here.
There we
It's
go.
also hard to square a first strike advantage existing when a war was already going on in the Donbass, which Russia was an unofficial participant in. Nevertheless, it is understandable why Putin would want to frame things in this way. Under international law, preventive war is illegal. Preemptive war.
Okay, so preventive war is illegal. But how many times have we actually put a leader into prison for said behavior? Anyone?
Zero.
Yeah. Funny how that works. Funny how that works. Let's continue.
War, on the other hand, is legal.
Oh, so preemptive war is legal, but preventative war is not.
Hey, listen to this right quick.
Okay, hold on one second, folks. I got to mute. I'll
Go
push
ahead,
play and
play the
then
video.
go from
Yeah.
there.
The framing is best thought as a public relations stunt, and so we will cross it off the list. Number 10. Miscalculation. There are so many ways Putin appears to have miscalculated that we could do an entire video on the subject. Perhaps the most obvious of these is the ease by which Putin thought Russia could steamroll Ukraine. The number of Russian forces deployed to Ukraine is estimated to be around 200,000. The standard rule of thumb is that an attacking side needs a 3-to-1 manpower superiority to overcome the advantages the defense has from fighting from entrenched positions. Ukraine has about 200,000 armed forces. That's a 1-to-1 ratio, and nowhere near what you would want it to be. Occupations are a little bit trickier than this. Although there is no similar consensus on rules of thumb for occupation forces, a good minimum is 1 soldier for every 100 inhabitants. However, Ukraine has a population of more than 40 million people. That's just 1 for every 200. The gap appears to be because Putin believed that Ukraine would fold easily, many of its citizens would welcome their Russian liberators, and Zelensky would be easily removed as an unpopular leader. Instead, Ukraine has shown tremendous resolve, and Zelensky has become a figure to rally behind. We can go back to the lines on maps to visualize the problem. Imagine that Russia thought the military balance was relatively favorable to it. It would therefore drive a hard bargain, with the red line being the minimum threshold in terms of a settlement. But if Ukraine knows that the actual balance looks closer to this, it would reject Russia's proposal and fight instead, because it needs to go out to the yellow line to be satisfied. Preventive war, preemptive war, and miscalculation as causes for war fall under a class known as rational unitary actor explanations. They have a long history of study within the field of international relations. We describe them as rational because the states can be fully strategic and still find themselves in war. They are unitary actor based because we think of the states as single entities and not represented by biased leaders. These prerequisites indicate that there are 2 more places to look, even as we formally remove first strike advantages from the list. And we continue with our explanation of the causes of war with number 11, irrationality. I find this to be uncompelling.
Irrationality? Let's see what he has to say, because I might have some arguments on this.
And, to be honest, a lazy take on the war. The basic argument for irrationality is twofold. First, Putin's desire to take over Ukraine does not make sense. Second, the war has gone so poorly for Putin that the only possible explanation for this is that there is something going wrong in his head. Let's take those 2 points one at a time. You and I may agree that fighting a nakedly territorial conflict in the 21st century is an interesting choice, and may be something better left to the days of the world wars. But there is a huge difference between having abnormal preferences and being crazy. There's no accounting for taste. Meanwhile, it is weird to think that Putin, someone who had been so calculating to ascend to the presidency of Russia, and who since taking office has carefully maintained power despite institutional rules that should have made that difficult, would somehow turn out to be irrational all along.
Well, he may not be irrational, but paranoid definitely seems to sit well with this. It's a paranoid cause.
Is he paranoid or is he calculating?
But what's he calculating against other than NATO?
Yeah, the fact that he's concerned about bringing U.S. troops to his border.
Well, that's true, but still.
And perhaps,
why only expand that little bit? Why not? If he's so afraid of it, just buff up your army and put it around the border better, and take all of Ukraine.
Yeah, there's got to be something more to this. It's
something weird. It's something weird.
Exactly. Unless the Biden thing plays into this somehow, right? Which it does, but we don't know how in depth. This little bit, but stranger things have happened. Wars have been
That's
fought
true.
over women, wars have been fought over, a river, a creek,
Wars have been fought over insults.
Exactly. So, who's to say, what this value of this land holds for him? So, it could be, it's probably a combination of all of it, to be honest with you. Is it irrational to think that? Probably. But is he also being calculating? Maybe. Uh, I don't know. I feel that last part of him, so far I've enjoyed the video, but this last little piece that he did, I don't know. I kind of felt he was dismissive against him. I thought he was showing a little bit of bias there.
Well, let's see.
Okay.
Maybe he'll change up a little.
Sure, it could be a new development. But an age of 69 is not that old. And in any case, the poor strategy implemented is more readily explained by the political environment around him. He has been isolated during the pandemic. And as an autocratic leader more generally, it is difficult to convince those around you to give true information and not just tell you what you want to hear. That's a recipe for a war via miscalculation, rationally occurring, but still looking silly in retrospect. Regardless, the irrational argument overlooks a critical piece of evidence. Putin's decision to invade has been very popular at home.
Whoops,
Before
sorry.
the war, Putin's approval sat at 67.2%. After the war began, Putin received a classic rally round the flag bump to 81.6%.
Wow.
And the odds are those numbers are legitimate despite the difficulty of polling citizens of autocratic governments. To be clear, those numbers may eventually drag down. But for now, this actually looks like a pretty good plan for Putin on the domestic front. Which takes us to number 12, Putin's personal benefits. This is more than just saying that Putin does not internalize the costs of war like the rest of his citizens. Even if you were sitting in the Kremlin and suffering nothing from the cost of conflict, that still just takes Russia's costs of war to zero. As long as Ukraine views the war as costly, there is still room to negotiate. Instead, the best argument here is that the war has helped Putin consolidate power. The rally round the flag effect, causing a 14-point boost in Putin's poll numbers, would certainly help in that regard. It's possible that Putin felt pressure from a domestic challenger and wanted to exploit a rally round the flag effect to make a coup look less attractive. Alternatively, if the potential challengers were from the military, simply sending them to the front lines, at worst, keeps them out of Moscow. And at best, from Putin's perspective anyway, they may never return home. And that has happened quite a bit already. This is pure speculation, of course, and it's the type of thing we are unlikely to know about until well after the war ends. Regardless, when those personal benefits are large, the negative costs of war can make conflict efficient and eliminate any room to negotiate. Eliminating irrationality as a possibility leaves us with 6 substantive issues and 3 bargaining frictions. The key takeaway here is that we need at least one from each of the columns. Otherwise, we don't get a war. And it may very well be the case that multiple of these factors were at play. Further parsing which of these was the driving force behind the war will be difficult to do until the history books are written. For now, the best we can do...
I have an issue with that, waiting for the history books to be written, because history has been so heavily edited, even in our lifetime. They have changed so many things that they claim are now accurate, but we know are inaccurate.
And I have
I
an
don't
issue
trust
with
it.
I have an issue with we don't have any reporters on the ground. We're not getting any good intel out. It's
Uh-huh.
not like previous wars like the Korean War, the Vietnam War,
Well,
where
those are wars that
reporters.
America was directly involved in.
Right, but I mean, there were plenty of wars where American journalists went into that war and was embedded to get the information out to the
Mhm.
world. And who is doing that today?
No one other than
Exactly.
Twitter. People on Twitter
Yep.
are the ones on the ground, and you
Yep.
still can't consider that accurate.
hmm I'm interrupting here because it sounds like you're eating something good.
Pancakes, blueberry pancakes.
Really now? Huh. I didn't know we were on a blueberry pancake pause.
I
Hmm.
was hungry and I was getting
No,
dizzy.
so
My blood sugar was
I
dropping.
know my blood sugar's going too, and I'm trying to decide if I could get my ass up and get something. But I don't have blueberry pancakes. Okay, that's
Make
fine.
some.
I know. See, I don't have anything to make. I have none. I think I have regular ones in there though, but that's not going to
Huh.
do. So everybody, you take a pause, go get a drink, get a blueberry pancake if you happen to have one. If not, get your next best thing and come on
well
back.
buttered, well
Oh
buttered
yeah.
blueberry
Oh, buttered and
pancakes.
syrup. And
I don't do
come on
syrup.
back.
Syrup's too sweet for me.
I do very little syrup. Just a little, just enough to make a little taste.
Mhm.
Very little. Other people drench it, but we'll have to start doing some surveys, putting them up there, you know. Syrup or
Syrup or
no
no
syrup.
syrup.
Yeah, right, right. There we
Yep.
go. I'm just checking in because I thought I heard her voice sound different, and I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
I
I had
think
to
if
get something in me because I was
yeah.
starting to get dizzy and I felt like I was going to pass out.
Oh, that hey, I warn you that I'm going to pass out. You think you're going to pass out? Oh,
This will
we're
be a
just
fun podcast if
oh
we pass out
yeah,
at the same
yeah.
time.
The two hosts go down at the same time, and the people in the chat are responsible. Oh,
There we go.
and we have nobody in today's chat. Oh, we're in
Eh,
trouble
it
today.
happens. All
Whatever. All right.
right.
Well,
I'm going to hit
hopefully,
play.
they'll leave us a comment.
Fingers crossed. So,
Right. Anybody that made it this far, leave us a pancake in the comment, and we'll give you a shout out at the next live.
there we go. All right. Let's hit play and try to get through the rest of this.
Is think about what each of these causes implies to see how the war might end. Let's start with the substantive causes of war. These are basically all the same story, and it's not good news. If these were the only reasons why wars were fought, then the average war would last a very long time. After all, resolving it would mean military defeat for one side. Either the attacker is defeated and can no longer capture the good, or the attacker captures the good and militarily defeats the other side, to the point where the defender can no longer try to retake it. It's possible that this might happen between Ukraine and Russia, but it will only go one way. Ukraine, as plucky as it has been for the last 3 months, simply does not have the manpower to invade Russia and destroy all of its military power. Ask Napoleon how that one went.
And I was just going to say, they don't have it. Even with America backing them and Europe backing them, there's no way they've got the manpower to do this. This is a battle they were destined to lose. And, if Europe had been better prepared instead of this complacent behavior we saw, then it might have been different. But again, Europe was not prepared. America is spread thin, and America did not promise boots on the ground in Ukraine if Russia attacked. We agreed to support them and send weapons, but we did not ever agree to put boots on the ground. And that is what Zelensky wants. Zelensky wants all the benefits of NATO without actually being in NATO. Let's continue.
Russia may have the ability to do that to Ukraine, however. But even then, that seems unlikely given the struggles Russia has had with its Kyiv offensive. And indeed, military defeat is rather uncommon in wars, occurring in only about a third of them. The other way the war can end as a result of the substantive causes is an underlying change in preferences. Basically, the causes just cease to exist. It's unlikely Zelensky is going to suddenly decide that parts of Ukraine are no longer something he is interested in. It's also unlikely that Putin is going to suddenly decide that parts of Ukraine are no longer something that he is interested in. What is more plausible is that Putin is forced out. This is part of the US strategy to influence the outcome of the war. Sanctions will eventually cause problems with Russia's ability to physically continue the fight. But the direct economic damage to the Russian economy is designed to incentivize challengers to Putin's control over the country. One way this could occur is through a popular uprising. However, because of the rally round the flag effect, this is unlikely in the short term. That said, some projections predict a greater than 10% recession for the Russian economy this year. That type of lagging indicator will change minds. The progress of the war can also have an effect. It appears that the general public thinks that the special military operation has been successful so far. That might change as soldiers rotate home and share their first-hand experiences with friends and family. This is the same process that led to domestic turmoil during the Soviet-Afghan War from the 1980s. For similar reasons, Putin could face a coup from someone deep inside the government. There are a handful of hurdles here too, Putin's current popularity among the masses being at the top of the list. One final possibility that has nothing to do with the war itself is that Putin could die of natural causes. Analysts have pointed to Putin's odd grasping of a table during a meeting with his defense minister as evidence of some kind of illness.
I don't see that as evidence of an illness. It's either an anxiety disorder or he is very angry with the person he is talking to, and he is trying to control his rage. I see that as a possibility, not a health condition, especially with his posture right here. He looks really pissed off to me. Just going to point that out. It does not look like he has an
No.
illness.
Well, what
I'm
would that?
sorry.
Yeah, does he identify what condition that would be?
No.
Okay, so I
And he
have to.
literally said, "I'm not qualified to comment on that." Well, I am to a degree.
Well,
Medical assistant, years.
Okay, well, what is a table holding illness called? I'm
There is
hungry.
other than something on the lines of Parkinson's, trying not
Okay,
to let his hand shake,
yeah,
um, something like that, maybe, but in this case, I don't see it like that.
right.
I see this as a very angry person who wants to throw the table at the guy on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. That's my personal opinion.
I mean, his eyes seem to be directed at the person. It doesn't
Mhm.
seem like they're slanted down, and his other hand is in his lap. Well, you know, I mean, as someone who suffers from tremors, I have never gripped the table. I'll tell you that to
No.
be. I've
Most
never.
people with tremors clasp their hands or hold their knee.
Exactly, and I put them in my lap.
Yep.
Mhm, I
That's the most common thing. So I do not see this as a medical issue.
right,
Again, I've worked in geriatrics. I have seen all kinds of conditions with elderly people. Most of them hold the table when they're getting up or walking and they need balance.
right.
Dude's sitting in a chair, looking very pissed off at the guy across from
Yeah,
him.
I mean, his grip on that table seems pretty strong.
Look at his hand right here.
Yeah,
I can't blow this up, but if you look, his veins and
and it's
tendons are
popping.
popping.
Yeah, and that isn't typical of when you're tremoring.
No, but that'd be a great vein. It looks like
Yeah,
a vein. That would be perfect
to
for
get
getting a blood
put
draw.
IV in or an
Anyone
IV.
out there who's done phlebotomy of any kind, we would be like, "Dude, that vein."
Yep.
Alright, let me hit play. We'll try to get through these last few minutes.
I am not qualified to comment on whether that might be true, so I won't. But leaders can die of natural causes in the middle of a war. Just ask Franklin Delano Roosevelt about that one. In theory, it is possible that the new leader would simply not care at all about the issues at stake and withdraw from the war accordingly. Russia's departure from World War I following the October Revolution comes close to looking like that. But even then, their treaty with the Central Powers ceded the Baltic states and made Ukraine independent. Eventually, the Soviet Union would want those back. Instead, the new leadership is altering the bargaining incentives. They might care less about the issues at stake or generally have higher costs of war. This can alter those incentives to allow for agreements to work that would not have worked previously. New leaders also don't have their fates tied to the war. Thus, they can end unnecessary conflicts without worrying that they will lose power. This solves the personal benefits problem that can otherwise kill a settlement. With the costs being back to positive for both sides, the parties can reach a deal. For example, Richard Nixon.
But Ukraine doesn't want a deal. They want absolute win. They want Russia on its knees. That's not going to happen. They want America to basically be their big brother while they go around kicking people in the ankles type of thing. Yeah, Russia's a threat to a degree, but it's not other countries' jobs to protect you. You don't get the benefits of NATO without joining NATO.
Right.
And that's the biggest issue I have. Zelensky does not appear to want peace. He wants complete and utter dominance of Russia. And I don't like that.
Well, and I truly don't believe that he can do that.
I don't think he can either, but he sure is going to try. He sure wants to try. But the problem is, what good is it going to do? You're just going to have a bunch of Russian people hate you. This is what I don't get. We are not in medieval times where you can just dominate and take over country lines.
Right.
It doesn't work that way anymore. We're more civilized and we are helping each other more and we have better communications to act faster. It doesn't work like that. I don't know. This is what I don't get about Ukraine and Russia. Everyone sits there and says, Russia bad, Russia bad. Why? Well, he wants to take over Ukraine. Why? No, because he wants the old Soviet Union back. Why? No one can answer. Why? Again, all these questions with no good, solid answer. I'm so fed up with it. Let's listen to what they're talking about with Nixon in Vietnam. See how this plays into it.
Nixon could leave Vietnam because it was not his war. Lyndon B. Johnson owned the political responsibility for that conflict. And in fact, Nixon came to power as a result of Johnson's unpopularity from the war. Keeping in line with this theme, when it comes to the bargaining problems more generally, you do not need a military defeat to end the war. For preventive motivations specifically, the cause of the war is a long-term shift in the balance of power. Thus, if you stop the source of the power shift and make tomorrow's balance the same as today's, you no longer need to worry about the future. Israel, for example, did not feel the need to fight full-length wars against Iraq in 1981 or Syria in 2007. They simply bombed those countries' nuclear facilities and went home, satisfied that they could no longer be used as part of a potential nuclear weapons program. If Putin started...
And again, the ways that it could have been done to prevent this, and it never happened.
Well,
that's what bugs me, is it could have been prevented, it could have been stopped, and no one did jack shit.
Well, I'm curious to know if things were done to try to prevent it, and he went and said, nope, I'm moving forward.
Well, that's what the mainstream has been saying.
I'd like to see some After, I mean, we'll find out sooner or later.
Well, and again, we can't really trust anything directly from Russia because it's
I
mostly
know.
propaganda,
I,
just
I,
like
I
anything
don't
from
trust
Ukraine
anything.
should be
I
considered
don't trust
propaganda.
anything. I don't trust anything from either one of them, right?
Yep,
And I don't trust anything that we have either. So where the hell do we
I
go to get the
agree.
source? So we don't have any damn answers. So we have
And
more
that's
questions.
and that's why I wanted to cover just the different perspectives and let everyone come to their own conclusions. These are the people and the things I've been presenting appear to be the most comprehensive and logical stuff. I'm not going with the wild people out there that are, who knows, it's a lizard person who took over Putin and is now trying to dominate the world. I'm not going with that crap. I'm going with what is very within reasonable logic to present so everyone can get their own well informed take technically. And again, all the links are there. Hopefully, they lead you down further rabbit holes and maybe you'll find something better. If you do, send it to me. I'll gladly present it. But as of right now, these are everything I've presented pertaining to the Ukraine war was the least propagandized and most logical stuff I could find. Just as a disclaimer. And trust me, that took hours of documentaries that I sat and watched. My head hurts. I've watched 3 documentaries on the biography of Putin. 2, no, 3 on Zelensky. And most of them were the 2 of the 3 were propaganda beyond all belief. All the stats and stuff from the news articles we've pulled, I have compared against other things. I mean, we're talking 4-hour documentaries. Anywhere from 1 to 4 hours I was watching and trying to break down for everyone because it is pure insanity, all the propaganda that's out there and all the illogical nonsense that's out there. Just going to put that out there for everyone to think about. Pure insanity trying to weed through this stuff. So, anything to add, Dee?
No, I didn't do anything. That's okay. Just move
You
on.
did a ton of work into this.
I didn't watch.
That's why I
No,
wanted
I
you to
watched.
add in. How
Yeah,
many
I
hours
didn't.
you put into it?
Yeah, I didn't watch all of the pre-videos that Crazy B did as far as the Putin, the Zelensky, the stuff like you're watching now. I went into different rabbit holes. I did more reading than anything. There wasn't much in the way of videos. Mine was going and searching for the money, which led you here, led you there. We both, I mean, what we presented and everything that we have listed in all of the show notes, not the show notes that are
The description.
in the description, um, is out of the norm. It isn't well, there might be some CNN stuff, and there could be some Fox News things. And what we're trying to demonstrate for you is here's the left, here's the right, here's some in between. But a lot of what you're going to see is the out of the box or the less propagandized, I guess would be the word,
Yep.
information that we could find. And again, if anything that you find, you feel free to send it to us and we'll look at it. Because by no means do either of us profess to be, you know, experts at this. But we have, for as dumb as we are, we have come up with some hard questions. We have connected some boxes that we have not heard connected anywhere.
Yep.
So, it has been a fascinating take on who, what, where, when, and why. And I still don't have answers for all the questions. If anything, we have more questions.
And
But,
this is the kind of stuff I love to do in research.
right.
It's
But we
stuff that
also,
never really ends.
right. But we also know that we'd like to move on to some other things. So I'm not sure if we'll get finished with this today or not.
Actually, I'm
Uh,
pretty sure we will. There's only like 5 minutes left.
okay. All right.
So let's
And
get through the 5 minutes and Oh, go
Then
ahead, finish, and then
regroup
I'll
from
do that.
there. Okay, sounds good.
All right. Let's hit play and get through this.
The war because he was worried about Ukrainian entry into NATO, then the war should end when that is no longer a possibility. Two key points over the last 3 months cast some doubt on whether preventive motivation provides a good narrative for the war. First, Ukrainian membership in NATO seems dead in the water at this point. NATO has a precondition that member states resolve their land disputes before joining the alliance. In fact,
Hold on
this
a second
precise
there,
policy
Crazy B.
Yep.
Wasn't there 30 that were supporting him
Yep.
in joining NATO?
There's quite a few countries that are encouraging him to get the
Okay.
corruption under control so they can.
Okay.
And I don't think this is a border dispute. I really don't think it
I don't
is.
either. I don't think it's a
It does
border.
not feel like it to me.
No.
There's
It
something else
feels
that motivated this.
yeah.
All right, let's continue. Like I said, this is a very good breakdown of the possibilities that lead to war. That's why I liked it so much.
is how Russia kept Georgia out. Putin simply invaded once Georgia started showing interest, and that ended the conversation. The counterpoint here is that Russia might still be worried about the level of arms transfers the West gives to Ukraine, short of actual NATO membership. Continuing the war to a complete military conclusion would mitigate that. On the other hand, Russia's current tactics do not indicate that that is what's happening here. The start of the war did look like that. It was a general invasion, coming from the north, pushing east, and radiating outward from the south. But Ukraine repelled the attack on Kyiv. The eastern front stalled, and the southern front has mostly been pushed back to the Dnipro River. If Russia were worried about the long-term capacity of Ukraine, one would expect a more general campaign focused on destroying more Ukrainian infrastructure.
Exactly.
Instead, the focus since the beginning of April has been sealing the land bridge along the Sea of Azov. This has destroyed the infrastructure in the area, but not elsewhere. There is still one way to rationalize this on preventive grounds. Russia might recognize that there will be some unavoidable long-term military buildup in Ukraine at this point. However, by fighting and taking territory now, Russia can install fortifications in the meantime that would counteract that buildup. This would mean that Russia will seek to end the war once Putin believes he has a strip of territory that is defendable, regardless of upcoming Ukrainian Western interactions. Finally, we can look at the end of the war from an informational perspective. If uncertainty causes a war, that war should end once the source of the uncertainty is gone. Perhaps Russia once thought that the distribution of power looked like this, and Ukraine thought that the distribution of power looked like this. But now they know that the distribution of power is actually here. Once we superimpose the costs of war back onto the map, we have a nice range of settlements that both sides know they should prefer to war. This learning process is known as convergence, and it is perhaps the main reason why so many wars end in a negotiated settlement. If the war ends soon, convergence is the most plausible interpretation for what happened. Putin seemed to think that the war would be straightforward. The Russian military would dominate the Ukrainian military. Ukrainian citizens would welcome the invasion, and that the northern deployment could easily waltz into Kyiv.
The fact that they said that the Ukrainians would welcome Russia is really mind-boggling, because a lot of Ukrainians want nothing to do with Russia because they lived through the SSR, the USSR. They lived through that communist era and they were not thrilled with it. So, what really could be the reason? Because Ukrainians are not going to cheer that on, and Russia knows it. They're not that delusional. Because if they're that delusional, then you got to add the paranoid, and that's what led to the war. Delusional expectations. I don't know. It bugs me. All these guessing and assumptions. There's too many loopholes that you can point out. It doesn't make any sense. Let's continue.
The first 6 weeks of the war proved how wrong those beliefs were. From a convergence perspective, this seemed like a plausible time for the war to end. However, as we just discussed, Russia switched tactics and turned its force exclusively to the area around the Sea of Azov. That's a new type of battle, and perhaps a new disagreement over what the likely outcome will be. However, very little territory is exchanging hands at the moment. That's a good indicator that not too much is left to learn, which paves the way for negotiations to be fruitful.
I want to point out this video is also a few years old. So, yeah, it's not near an end because they want to drag this out. Couple more moments.
One caveat here is that the source of uncertainty may not be what is happening right now, but rather what will be happening 6 months from now. Can Ukraine successfully convert its citizens into a full-fledged fighting force?
Nope.
Ukraine might think so,
gonna happen.
but Russia might be skeptical. Will Western support remain strong? Or will it peter out as the news headlines move on to whatever new disaster is happening in the world? Again, the West might anticipate continued strength, but Russia might not. If that is where the uncertainty is, then the learning process will take longer to complete, and the fighting will go on.
And it did. It most certainly
And that does it.
did.
12 causes of the war. Or perhaps more accurately, 9 causes of the war, and what they say about the chances of a peace agreement. Do you see any other causes that I might have missed? If so, let me know in the comments.
We don't need to worry about that part. But yeah, when you sit here and you think about it, and how long after that video it's continued, it makes you really think that Russia has a reason that is not easily thought of. I mean, I am no strategist by any means. I use strategy to determine a lot of things in life and all that, but I am no expert in it. And yet here we are, years down the road, Russia's still holding its ground and Ukraine's still holding their ground, and it's a stalemate, and it's never going to end unless peace talks happen. So we know Ukraine said, screw peace. Russia's like, well, if they won't, then why should we? Again, we're having this issue of Ukraine got in over its head and NATO was caught with its pants down. Thank you, Dee.
You're welcome.
NATO was definitely caught with its pants down on this one. And if Ukraine is supposedly some kind of ally that we're supposed to be protecting and helping, yeah, there's a lot of problems there. A lot of problems. What's your take on the whole thing?
I agree. Well, hence my $1. That's all I could afford. No, I wanted to see if
It's
it
all
would
right.
work. Yeah, I wanted to see if it
Yeah,
would
it
work.
works.
I couldn't get anything to drop in the live chat. So that's why I tried that. I'm kind of like I said, I have more questions now listening to this than I have answers. Now,
Yeah.
we do have some updated information that I sent, and I really don't know how you broke that down or clipped that up of where we stand at right now with what Trump had signed.
Where was that? Which video was that?
I don't remember. If we don't have it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. It really does lead me to believe why. Because there was no way with Ukraine, with its small numbers, right, that Russia couldn't have just wheeled right over them. But the reason they didn't was because all hell would have broke down on Russia. The wrath
Yeah.
of Europe and the United
Oh,
States would have come down on them,
hi,
right?
Brent.
Hey, Brent.
Hi, Brent. Yeah, it
So,
would have brought all hell if Russia
right,
had done a full out
right.
invasion. Like, and I know they called this a full out invasion, but I think Russia was holding back.
Well,
I
obviously,
agree.
according to this, they were. Normally, he said you're
Uh-huh.
sending 3 to 1 to take advantage, right? And they only sent
Yeah.
1 to 1 for combat.
It
For
doesn't
war,
sound like
for
a complete
right,
invasion.
for similar World War One trench warfare, they sent 1 Russian for every
One.
1 Ukrainian, right? Then they
Yeah,
said
it does not make
that they
sense.
had 1 person to keep the peacekeeping per 100 people. But in this case, they had
Uh-huh.
1 person per every 200. So their numbers just didn't make sense. Russia was not dragging
Yup.
people off the ground. They weren't sending their 65-year-olds to be on the front line. Oh,
No.
you know which one I wanted to play? That was a quick one. Let me see if I can find it. And that was the one with the young kid and the old woman.
I
The
already
old
have that already broke up. I
oh,
can play that really quick.
yeah. Do that real
I
quick
have that broke
because
up.
yeah, this one I found I was pissed, man, when I saw this. So we'll see what the audience has to say about that.
Right here. Let me back this up. Okay, minimize this. Share that. I'm getting the hang of this. I promise. Uh-oh. It's not letting me share. Why?
Don't
What did
know.
I do wrong? There we go. All
Okay.
right, I got this whole video. Let's give it a listen. It's only I cut it down to 4 minutes from
Cool.
the 20 something it was.
Yeah. Cool.
Russians and Ukrainians who live in America think about that meeting. So I went to Brighton Beach, which is home to the most amount of Russians and Ukrainians living in America, to get some responses.
Where are you from?
Ukraine.
Ukraine?
Yeah.
Are you visiting or do you live here now?
Like lived 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you think of the meeting between Trump and Zelensky?
He just like started raising his voice, and I think he should like support Ukraine and give some help, because if like he's not gonna support it, he's gonna take over Ukraine and go further to take over Europe.
And is that because of something that Putin said or just a feeling that you have?
I have like feeling.
Now, Israel's enemies, however, have made it very clear that they want a world without any Christians or Jews.
Do you believe that Ukraine can win the war?
I think yeah, they have a lot of power, and if America is still gonna support.
I just know I've seen videos of Zelensky. He's taking 60-year-old men who are walking their dogs and he's putting them in a car and sending them to the front line. I've also seen people with Down syndrome on the front line. It seems like they have some manpower issues. Do you feel that same feeling as well? Yeah, because I know that there's not many people left to fight there.
Yeah,
You know?
there's a lot of people died in the war.
Yeah. So do you think that even after money, do you think United States should send in troops as well? Would you like to see us send troops into Ukraine?
If possible, yes.
You would like to see that?
Yeah.
And same goes for UK and those other countries as well.
Yes.
Let's say Putin keeps the territories and the fighting stops. Would you be interested in that or no?
But like Ukrainian people will not accept this, because like he took the territories, and like
Okay,
there's
so-
people like there's still people who live there,
Yeah.
Ukrainian people. They're like trying to make people like to be Russian passports.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Not interview why that was something that he had to say, because clearly for many Ukrainians, peace is not the first priority.
I think Zelensky is very unskilled professionally as a diplomat. Whether or not you like Trump, he was laying out America's position, which is we don't think you're going to win the war. I think it's been demonstrated you can't win. So what's the point of continuing for the next 40 years endlessly to fight when you're not going to win anything?
Yeah.
Just so you can be the movie hero? You know, that's his take. Zelensky's take is we were invaded and by an evil man, and Trump saying it's not my job to say whether he's evil or not. It's my job to strike a deal. Trump actually, I think, was the grown up in the room that day.
Yeah.
Whether or not you agree with his
Yeah.
policies may be wrong
Yeah.
if you don't agree with them. But in terms of behavior, Zelensky has to know: A, you don't show up at a meeting dressed in a t-shirt just to show how.
I love how the people from there, especially the older generation, are more quick to criticize Zelensky for his behavior and his actions, but the young ones are just like, "Yeah, send more people from other countries to
Well,
die too."
I have a
And that
major
kid's
attitude.
aged. That kid could
Oh,
go over and fight.
that's
He's
right. I have a
military age.
major problem with that. That that kid's been here 3 years. Why isn't
Yep.
he back fighting in his own country where
Yeah.
he comes from? If he gives a shit so much about it, I'll tell you what, my sons or my grandchildren will not go fight that war as long as I know that little MFers in this country. I will go to
Uh-huh.
New Brighton myself and drag him out and put him on a plane back home. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
That's the attitude of the military age people. Yeah, we wanna free Ukraine from Russia, but not us do it. We want somebody else to do it.
Oh, yeah, so we're going to send my kids. Bullshit.
Exactly.
It's
I'm
bad
not
enough
sending
you're
my son to
sending my
fight somebody
fucking
else's
money.
war.
Now you're going to send my kids? Bullshit. Oh gosh, get me
Yep.
riled up. That kid had me so angry when I read. There's several more like that.
It's all across the
Yeah,
refugees in multiple countries.
yeah.
It's the same attitude.
I mean, how is it any different than? Is it different than what Ilhan Omar is doing, saying I support Somalia, and as long as I'm in as a United States Congresswoman, I will do everything to protect you and make sure you get the money and blah blah blah. They're her actual
Yeah,
state.
that she's
You know,
wrong. She
I'm,
should not be in Congress.
yeah, they're not word for word. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. That's telling you the gist of the conversation. Go look it up. That's what she said.
Brent's giving you some advice. Don't get too riled up.
Oh, I'm not riled up yet, Brent. Not yet.
This is
When
just
they
the
come,
this is just the
yeah,
start.
yeah, when they come for the children, when they come for the kids, it's frustrating. Um, to come across that, to see that they're in our country taking advantage of everything that we have to offer. I can only imagine he's probably a student or whatever. But you know what I'm
No,
surprised
he's a
at is
refugee. He's here as a
he's a
refugee.
refugee. Okay. I'm
Yes.
surprised that Zelensky didn't call them all back. Say send all the refugees back.
Trump just did that for him. Trump
Oh, he
revoked
did?
their legal status, and they
Okay.
got to be deported back to
Cool.
Ukraine.
Really?
So, yeah, that was the other day.
Okay, cool. Well,
Let's
my man's going to
let's
be
get to
swept
this
up, I guess. What?
last minute or almost 2 minutes, and
Okay, go
you're going
ahead.
to hear some people who 100% support America not being overly involved. So
Hmm.
let's continue.
Cool you are. Or hey, I just came off the battlefield. You show up in a jacket and ties, the President of the United States.
What did you think of the meeting between Trump and Zelensky?
Well, it was a big disappointment. It's another betrayal of an ally.
You think that we should keep giving Ukraine billions of dollars, right? Okay.
Of course, we
Flabbergasted.
like with everybody else, like with Israel,
Yeah.
like with Egypt, like with every other ally. If we disengage,
Yeah.
there are plenty of forces in the world. No, I was a soldier back in Israel.
Oh, you were in the
Yes,
idea.
yes. I know it. I evacuated Gaza in 1994.
Okay.
I mean, it's not winnable at all. It's not. It's impossible to win. It's gonna like.
Wow, his own citizens are saying it's impossible to win.
No,
No, I did not talk
no,
about the
yeah,
ceasefire you posted earlier.
right.
Shit,
It's
I
impossible.
missed it.
Yeah, it's impossible to win, but send all your money. He said that. Send
What?
the money,
Yeah,
but
where's the
you're not going to
ceasefire
win.
thing that you're
Yeah.
talking about, Brent?
Okay, I got to get a drink now that Brent upset me. I'll be right back.
Brent didn't upset you.
No, he didn't. I'm teasing.
The jackass is over there dead.
Jack.
I'm going to let this continue playing for a few more moments, and we'll go from there.
Drag forever. Think about this mineral deal. It looks very much like plundering. Who owes whom money? It's the fact that Ukrainian elites were trading with their own country doesn't mean the people have to suffer. They are still doing American
But
bidding.
speaking about Ukrainian elites, so Zelensky is saying that he can't account for like $100 billion. He doesn't know where it is. Like, do you think that there's widespread corruption in Ukraine?
No. I think it's a misunderstanding what he said. What he said is that the numbers are inaccurate that Trump provided. It's much more than the actual thing, and it's true.
Oops. So, um, I'm not sure where half that video went. I must have accidentally edited it out. But those were the two main talking points. The main talking points from that. Brent also sent some things. I want to share this if I can. Give me 1 second. Right here. So, breaking: Ukraine has agreed to an immediate interim 30-day ceasefire, but Russia must first agree first per CBS. Odds of a ceasefire just shot up 77%. This is on Polymarket.
Yeah, I thought I sent
I believe
something
you can actually
earlier.
bet on this shit.
Yeah. Did I send something that said that Russia agreed to a ceasefire?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I'll double check.
And then one more thing I wanted to cover right here. Let me make sure it's showing up. Is Brent sent this as well. The estimated available manpower between Russia and Ukraine. These numbers are insane. Literally tripled, almost quadruple what they have available from Russia. Russia is way ahead of Ukraine. And on this first one, the estimated available manpower, yeah, that's a mess. And if you go down there, active soldiers, 900,000 versus, and this is as of 2025, by the way, folks. So active soldiers, 1,320,000 for Russia, 900,000 for Ukraine. Reserve forces, 2 million versus 200,000. Paramilitary, 250,000 to 100,000. They neither has an air force. Total aircraft. Look at this. Ukraine does not stand a bloody chance in hell looking at these numbers, folks. And I will post the links to all of this in this Discord, in the description. And I know you sent another one. Oh, that's from AI. As of March 11th, Russia's armed forces are estimated to have 1.5 million active personnel, with plans to further increase the number and a reserve of around 2 million. I'm not going to read the whole AI because that is lengthy as all get out. But yeah, I'm telling you, folks, This whole situation going on, something ain't adding up right. The math is not mathing. That's also 32 pages long. Holy crap. I'm telling you, when I said it feels like Russia's holding back, I'm not joking. I don't know where D went. D disappeared, but she'll probably be back. There she is. I know we're at the 2 hour mark. I try not to go over 2 hours for the sake of everyone and your sanity, but it's just something to think about. Russia is obviously holding back. If it was a full blown invasion, Ukraine would be wiped off the face of the earth. Looking
Yeah,
at those numbers.
that's what we said from the beginning, the get go. And it was not done because Europe and the United States would have went to war. We would have went to World War III. That's why he held
Yes.
back. But I still don't. The fascinating part, though, is why did he hold back and why did he feel it necessary to go start it in the
Again,
first place?
because he
Right?
doesn't want to dominate and own all of Ukraine. He just wants this
No,
this little bit of region.
right. But what does it do for all the other players involved, though? Right? It kept
Oh,
it.
lots of money laundering.
Exactly.
Oh, shit ton of money
Exactly.
laundering.
Exactly.
It's so much easier to lose
Uh
a
huh.
couple 100,000 here and there when there's a
Yep.
war going on.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell you guys, this ain't no joke. I'm seriously, absolutely sure Russia is holding back because Russia doesn't want this to drag out. Russia wants this to end. Ukraine, laundering a ton of money, wants Russia to be the bad guy, and all of NATO and Americans' population of politicians is getting kickbacks from this.
Right.
Time to put this to an end. I agree. We need to end this shit super fast. There is no reason whatsoever we should be, you know, it just does not make sense. Does logically,
It doesn't
strategically,
no.
none of
I
this
mean,
makes sense.
we're going to
Go
be
ahead.
coming out with our new saying come April 1st as well, but there
Yeah.
is uh for all of the many players that are involved, it makes you wonder if I'm trying to think on some of the movies that are played. Shooter would have been one of them where everybody got around. I believe it was it the VP's house or somebody's house, and everybody and their mother showed up for, a dinner and drinks. Ultimately, they all got shot and killed, but regardless, they were going to have this is how we're going to handle this person going forward kind of thing. So it does make you wonder, like, who's who of who's in bed and who's doing what uh, with who, because it's really hard to get a handle on everything. So again, for us, we go back to follow the money, and we still don't know we haven't even delved into, like, for example, say we know that we gave you $100,000, right? Well, we know we gave you the 100,000, but we don't know what you did with it. We haven't delved into any accounting as far as where that money went to. And let's say that you even used it for something as, Crazy Bee's missile launch system. Does that even exist? You know, uh, there's so much that goes into forensic accounting that's not in our realm. But we could get some hit or misses there. But again, I also think that somehow, and I'm just going to say it, and if YouTube, well, whatever, say our two famous people, ex president and son, they're involved in that
Uh-huh.
somehow. They're involved with the
Oh,
Ukraine
yeah.
somehow. They have to be. The
That's the only
timing
thing that
of
makes
all
sense.
of this. Yeah, the timing of this just seems to make sense. And I don't understand why Putin, with the manpower that he had, just didn't go in and he could have taken whatever he wanted.
Yeah,
And,
exactly
it,
my
and,
point.
and, the, and the issue with the with the people that spoke. There are numerous people there. They showed you that half of the country spoke Russian, the other half spoke
Yep.
Crimea. Each faction
Nope,
wanted to be
Ukrainian.
I'm sorry, Crimean, Ukrainian. So each faction wanted to be with, Russian speaking wanted to be with Russian, Ukrainian wanted to be with Ukrainian. Why didn't we just take the pencil and go down the line that way? Russian, Ukrainian, pick your choice. Because I don't know, in my opinion, to live in both places probably suck compared to the United States. Like
Yeah,
whose place is best to live in? They don't seem that they have that much to offer in the location, the geography we're talking about. I don't know.
exactly.
I really don't know. I can't call this one at all.
I know. I wanted to say hi, hey Leah, over in the chat. Um, yeah, this is where I keep coming from. None of these reasonings make any damn sense when you stop and think about it and you start using some logic with it. Their reasonings and what they're claiming just it's not adding up. Other than money laundering and dragging this out, and then it makes you wonder, did Ukraine actually start this, not Russia, as a way to drag this out?
Right.
Oh, let me share this for you because it's in the private chat.
Where am I going for that?
Oh, I just gotta. I'm resharing your thing
Okay.
over onto YouTube.
Okay.
Because it only shows
For-
you in the private chat. Until
Yeah,
we
I
get the
don't.
other studio up and running, you
It'll
won't be able to type directly from here, the studio. You'd have to go to your YouTube app on a different device.
Okay, that's fine. I have both
So,
phones, so whatever.
yeah,
All
for
right.
right
Well,
now, it's no big deal.
yeah. Why don't we call it a day?
I was gonna say we're gonna wrap this up. We've been here
Yeah.
for 2 hours now.
Yeah, call it a
I
day.
started a little bit early, but
Yeah.
other than that, I really enjoyed going over the last of this and doing the brainstorming, picking it apart, trying to figure this all out because again, none of this is making any sense. None of it. So, I don't know. I guess we call it a day and I will be back hopefully Thursday if all goes as planned after my physical therapy.
There we go. And now I don't
Alrighty,
have to have
folks.
the taskmaster cracking her whip at me. If you start hearing silent cries for help, please come save me.
How do you hear silent cries for help?
That's what I'm saying. If they do, come save me.
Yeah, but it's you said silent,
I know,
so
I
you
know
can't
what I
hear
said,
silence.
but it's possible they can pick it up. You never know. You know, some
Telepathy?
telepathy, maybe Hey, I'm not divulging all of my methods of my madness. Not quite yet. Yeah, we got too much we got to do. So, all right,
Alrighty. I will catch you guys next time.
all right. I'll talk
So
to you
with
later,
that,
guys.
I
Be
thank you all
safe.
for showing
Go
up,
ahead,
being
Ange. Do
here,
your thing.
and as usual, stay safe, stay sane, stay sober. I truly appreciate those who showed up and those who are going to be watching later on. I will catch y'all on the next one.